what our journey has been, our exodus, but really it's about your exodus, what God's doing in all of our lives is He's trying to take us from darkness to light, right? Out of the kingdom of darkness and into the kingdom of light. And so there's this thing called bondage. We don't think like, I'm not shackled. I don't live in a country where I'm persecuted. And yet there's bondage that's internal. We live in a culture that has a different way of living. And where you guys are in control and you only have you to trust on in your bank account and the people in your life. And when they fail you and you lose your job, or when the trauma of the past comes back to bite you and you can't seem to get set free and your coping mechanisms aren't working anymore and your addictions and all of your stuff just doesn't seem to work anymore. That's when God steps in and He says, I've got something better for you. He came to set you free. If you read the words of Jesus, time and time again, He says, I came to set you free. The Israelites responded, we've never been slaves to anybody. Of course, they had a short memory. They were slaves in Egypt, and that's what we're reading about for 400 years. They were under Roman, the Roman regime. It's like, dudes, really? And it's like, we would say the same thing, though, today. If I said, Jesus came to set you free, you would say back to me, free? Free from what? I'm not in bondage. I'm not in slavery. Oh, right? Oh. God, open my eyes. If I followed you around for a week, right? If Jesus was able to walk around and tell you what you're fighting against, and some of it's internal, some of it's in your head, some of it's lies that you believe to be true about yourself, about God, about the world, about the future, about the past, about your worth, about your true identity, He'd say, I need to set you free. And so we come, this is a great summer series. As we look at Israel, we also share our own stories of freedom, what God set us free from. Today, we're going to look at pressure. What do you do when you're under pressure? As I look at the story of Israel, I'm kind of fascinated to see how many times they were in situations where they panicked. And the interesting thing that sometimes we'll miss too easily is the fact that God put them in some of those situations intentionally to see what would happen. Because when we're under pressure, right, what's inside comes outside. And sometimes it's not too pretty. So when we're under pressure, the question is like, what do you do when tragedy strikes? Because depending on how you respond in adversity could determine whether you're going to wander for 40 years in the wilderness like Egypt or whether you're going to go into the promised land, right? How you respond when the pressure's on. There's this great little illustration that you guys should know and keep somewhere in the back of your head about a submarine. Submarines are meant to go deep underwater. What happens is the deeper you go underwater, if you've ever been scuba diving or anything, is the pressure builds up. The deeper you go, the pressure builds up. It's like there's an equation, mathematical equation. And so the submarine's walls have to be reinforced such that the internal pressure exceeds the external pressure that's pushing in on it. What do we call external pressure in our lives? It's new words, new science into the 60s. Stress. We call it stress. You know what it feels like to be stressed? That's when the external pressure begins to exceed your inner strength. Now you'll feel it, right? But what happens if it gets too great and it exceeds your internal strength as you begin to implode like a submarine that goes too deep? So the question is, how strong are you inside? How's your core, your inner man? How's your faith? How's your hope? How's your love? See, I believe what the enemy came to steal, kill, and destroy in John chapter 10 is not your house, your car, your fun. He came to steal, kill, and destroy something more precious than that, which is your faith, your hope, and your love. And he's using everything in his power and everything external around you to steal that which is internal. And the question is, how strong is that internal core faith that you have, which is the greatest gift you have, the greatest possession you own, according to 2 Peter. Greater than silver or gold refined by fire, it says. Your faith is greater worth than that. The question is, how strong are you? Well, you'll only know when they don't show up for donuts on Sunday morning, right? I got here and I was like kind of bummed too, because it's like, my only donut all week, you know? It's like, dang. And then I thought, how appropriate. What was that? No, it wasn't your fault. It's summertime. We have a breakdown sometimes in summer, so I apologize for that. But I thought, if there's any sign that God is with us, it was the fact that there were donuts, because we're going to talk about Him putting in Israel in situations where they hungered and thirsted, right? And what God did was He was testing them, right? So I mean, how appropriate is that? God is with us today to see what was in their heart. So I'm going to give you 3 scenarios that Israel went through that put them under pressure to reveal their character and their internal strength. And then we're going to pull some application from that for ourselves for today. So the first one's found in Exodus 13 and 14. Israel is threatened. Their backs are against the wall. And God put them there intentionally. Let's go ahead and read about it. When Pharaoh let the people go out of Egypt, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter, for God said if they face war, they might change their minds and want to go back to Egypt. So I'm not going to put them under too much stress, too much pressure too soon, because they'll just freak out and want to go back. So I need to ease them into this thing, and I need to reveal myself to them. So God led the people around the desert toward the Red Sea. Let's go ahead and jump then to 14:1. Then God said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back now and encamp near Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They're to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around in the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, but I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. All right, so I threw little things together, and I forgot my little red thing. Show me these slides of where they're encamped. So they leave Egypt on the Exodus, and Goshen is where they lived in Egypt, and then they went down. Now, the way of the Philippines goes up the Mediterranean Sea to the north. He didn't lead them that way, because then they would run into the Philistines and have to fight them. So he led them down the way of the desert towards the Red Sea. Now you have 2 fingers there on the Red Sea, the left one and the right one is the Gulf of Aqaba. And they get down to Pi-Hahiroth, how do you say that? But down there at the point, facing, what was the name of that place? Facing that other place. Baal-Zephon, yeah. And that is right across. Go ahead and show the next slide. So there they camped, Israel's camp. Pi-Hahiroth is down below them. Baal-Zephon is that island, and actually it's that island and what's over next to it across that Gulf of Aqaba, Red Sea. And so they come back, they're encamped there. Pharaoh's army comes down, the pillar of fire stands between the 2 of them, and their backs are against the sea, and Pharaoh's army is coming after them. Migdol is that mountain, it's called Watchtower, that's what it means, between Migdol and Beth-Zephon. Okay, so that's where they're at. That's their situation. They're hemmed in, their backs are against the wall. And this is, and God tells Moses the situation, but he doesn't tell Israel the situation, right? So they don't know that God has a plan going on here. All they know is they're just hanging out, and now Pharaoh's army is attacking them. Chapter 14, verse 10, it goes on, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and this is what they see. They don't know the story, they don't know the backstory. And there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. Then they said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out in the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Just let us serve the Egyptians. Let us be slaves the rest of our lives. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Point, how you respond to adversity can change the rest of your life. Right? How will they respond? How do we typically respond to adversity? Ask yourself how you typically respond to adversity. Because how you respond to adversity will affect the rest of your life. And there's something going on. Grumbling and complaining will send you in one direction. Panic, fear, what you see, what you believe will be revealed. And yet faith and obedience will take you in a completely opposite direction. Now here's the point. God always has a plan and a purpose for everything he does and everything he allows. For everything that life throws at you and for everything the enemy is doing in your life. God has a plan and a purpose for everything that goes on in your life. And we always have this saying in our humanity, it's kind of, I wonder what people mean by it. They say, well, everything in life happens for a reason. Right? You hear that? I hear that like once a week at least. And I go, well, what do you mean by that? They usually can't respond to what they mean by that. But here's the truth, that everything that happens in your life, God has a plan and a purpose for what's happening. So we have this, God's plans in the Old Testament. He says, my plans for you are good. Now, he just planned a thing for Israel, right? He said, all right, I want to do this thing because I want you to experience myself, and so you're not going to understand it until the end of the story. And so I'm going to put you in the situation, turn back and camp out. And I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and he's going to come after you. I want him to do this. And I want to show you something. I want to show you my glory, right? I want to show the Egyptians who I am, and I want to show you who I am. But you won't know who I am until I put you in this situation. Of course, they panic and fear, right? Because they don't know the story. So there's a plan and a purpose that God has in everything that he does, and also in everything that he allows. Romans 8:28 says God will work everything out for good. Everything in your life. Whether he orchestrates it and he causes it or to happen, right? To put you in a situation where you lose your job, put you in a situation where something happens, he's involved in it. And what happens to us is all we see is the Egyptians. All we see is cancer. All we see is my bank account. All I see is the enemy approaching me. I don't see God in it. I don't know the plans. I don't know the future. I don't have the backstory. And so what happens when I face adversity? And what will I do? Because my choices in that moment could change the rest of my life and the trajectory of my journey, right? I could end up wandering for 40 years in a desert trying to figure out what's going on. Or I can trust that God's in it. That he has a plan, that his plans are good. That he hasn't left me or forsaken me. That his promises are faithful and true. He knows where I'm at. He knows my name. And he knows how to get me out of the situation or through the situation. Right? Where there seems to be no way, God can make a way. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to run to Egypt for help. I'm not going to go back. I'm going to stand and see the deliverance of the Lord, which is many times what God told Israel to do, right? When he put them in situations or when the enemy came to attack. Just stand. It's what we read about in Ephesians 6, right? The armor of God. When you've done everything you can, just stand. Stand and see the deliverance of the Lord. Lord, you know where I'm at. I'm trusting in your faithfulness. Lord, I'm not going to panic in all things with prayer and petition. Make a request known to God. Don't be anxious or fret or freak out about anything. What? You don't live in my world. What? No, he did live in our world. Consider him who endured such opposition so that you don't grow faint or lose heart. We're going to take the Lord's Supper at the end of this message, and I want you to consider him because he didn't freak out or panic. He said, Lord, I don't really want to do this, but not my will but yours be done. So the question is, what do you do when you face adversity? Because the decisions you make in that moment could radically affect the rest of your life. And it could mean wandering for 40 years in a spiritual desert. Or it could mean going on to experience the goodness of God and the promises of God in your life. God's plans always involve your transformation your maturity, and your inner strength. What God is working on in your life through the adversity that you experience from the external world outside of you, He's working on building your inner core, your strength, your character, your peace, your joy. And He's saying, where is it coming from? If you're trying to receive it from here, it's going to disappoint you, right? Where does your joy come from? Where does your hope come from? Where does your identity come from? Where does your trust and your confidence come from? Great Old Testament passage that says, if you don't stand firm in your faith, you won't stand at all. And what God's trying to do is build your faith. And what the enemy's trying to do through the external is to destroy your faith and your trust. That's it. So outwardly we're wasting away. These things are going to die and decay. But inwardly we should be being renewed day by day. Where Paul says our light momentary troubles are not worthy to be compared to the glory that will be revealed in us. And so it's like, what? Light momentary trouble, shipwrecked, stoned 3 times, beaten, left alone. It's just like sitting in jail writing, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your joy be evident to all. God is with you. I've learned to be content in every situation, well-fed or not. I can do it all through Christ. He had an inner strength. He had an inner core that he could endure all this stuff on the external, and he wouldn't implode. And in fact, he would find joy in it. You see? And so these are our models, our examples. And so what God's trying to do through adversity and through what you face this week, what you face in your life, is to find out, A, test to see what's in your heart, and B, to strengthen your core, your faith in Him and His promises. So that no matter what the enemy throws at you, no matter what life throws at you, you're not going to implode. That's one of the reasons we gather. I got so many things that I'm just saying right now that aren't even. It's one of the reasons we gather on Sunday morning, right? Because you're in a battle and you've got a shield of faith and you're trying to keep trusting in God when arrows of doubt, arrows of lies are coming at you left and right Monday through Saturday. And so what do we do on Sunday? We come in here, we knock off the arrows, we encourage one another daily, and all the more as you see Christ's day approaching. Don't give up meeting as some are in the habit of doing. You need one another. We need encouragement from another. Stay strong in the faith, brother. Stay strong in the faith, sister. God's good. I know you don't see it right now. I know you don't see the big picture. I know you're confused. I know you're starting to get scared and panic, but God is good. God is here. God sees you. He knows you. He's with you. God, show up and do the impossible in my sister, my brother's life. And I'm going to stand by them and hold their hands up when they can't hold their own hands up. Right? That's why we gather. There's a purpose. God's not taking roll. Oh, didn't go to church 52 out of 52 weeks. Get in the back of the line on the way to heaven. It's not like that. It's like, no, guys, we need each other. This is a battle we're in, and it's a battle for your faith. You're going to face external pressure. The question is, how will you respond when adversity hits? I guarantee you, when you walk out this door, if you're not thinking about the adversity that you're already facing when you walk out, you'll find some. The enemies are waiting for us. God's plans always involve your transformation, your maturity, and your inner strength. And God's plans always involve revealing His glory and always involve defeating the enemy. Isn't that good? So that's the truth. That God is in everything. And He's working in everything in your life. The question is, are you going to trust Him? Are you going to follow? Are you going to obey? You're going to experience Him, or are you going to go another direction? So chapter 14, let's finish scenario number 1. Chapter 14, verse 30 and 31. That day, the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. We know He opened the Red Sea, and what? How does that happen? I don't know, but God's with you. Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the seashore, and when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in Him and in Moses, His servant. Let's go on to scenario number 2. Scenario number 2, they hunger. So they get across the Red Sea, and You'll see these names, and I'm going to show you some more maps, but we don't have time. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim, which is the first town they come into. And they came to the desert of Sin, or Zin, Z-I-N, which is between Elim and Sinai on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. So they've been on the road for about 75 days now. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate the food, all the food we wanted. But you brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Yeah, that's why God set you free. Just to watch you suffer. Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. These people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, again, God's plans and purposes, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions." Scenario 3, a week later, in Exodus 17, the next chapter, God allows them to get thirsty in the desert. Here's what it says in chapter 17, verse 1. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, where they experienced the hunger, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded, pillar of fire, pillar of smoke, guiding them. They camped at Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. So what did they do? And the pressure's on. Under pressure. Right? I had to do that once. Right? So they quarreled with Moses, and they said, "Give us water to drink." That's a good response. Don't ever quarrel with me. It's not my fault. Okay? The donuts. It's not my fault. It's not your fault either. God wanted it to happen. Why do you quarrel with me, and why do you put the Lord to the test? Verse 3, but the people were thirsty for water, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Like, duh, that's what God did. He just wanted you to die. He's done all this just so you would die of thirst. You know, let's just pause. When you get into scriptures and you read between the lines, it's like, don't you question God's goodness and God's plan and God's purposes and God's... You get into situations and we begin to think, and the lie is quickly that God somehow just left me. That he died on the cross, he saved me. When I gave my heart and my life to Jesus, he entered into my life, and the darkness went out. That when I face a situation, that all of a sudden we start thinking real quick that God somehow just left you. Like God has abandoned you. Like how quick we go there. It's like what? He died for you just to leave you here in this mess? He died to leave you defenseless against the enemy of your soul? He died to what? No, he's in it with you. To build you, to strengthen you, to reveal himself to you. He's in it with you that you might experience his goodness and his glory. But without faith, you'll never experience it. And so he puts us in situations, or he allows situations, or life throws them at you, and you got to know that God's with you right then. You might not feel him, see him, you might not know the big picture. But please, learn. In fact, this is what it says in Hebrews. It says, Israel did all kinds of stuff, and I'm going to write them down so that we don't do the same thing they did. These are written down as examples so that we don't put our heart on those things. Well, Moses cried out to the Lord and said, "What am I to do with these people? They're ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, take the staff in your hand which you struck the Nile with, and I will stand there before you at the rock of Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." 2 million people. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah, testing, and Meribah, quarreling, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" That's the question. That's a question that your mind subconsciously, if not consciously, will ask when you face adversity. Is God with you or not? Did God leave you? Did God abandon you? Is God powerless to save you? Did the enemy just thwart God's plans for you? Or is God with you in this, working, doing something that you don't know about yet? But its purpose is to strengthen you, mature you, grow you, so that none of the things that the enemy will throw at you will ever steal, rob, or kill your faith, your hope, or your love in God. So let's see how Deuteronomy says it. Remember how the Lord, He led you all the way in the wilderness 40 years to humble you and to test you in order to know what was in your heart. I think sometimes we have to know what's in our own heart. We think our faith is strong until tomorrow morning, right? When the milk is sour in the refrigerator, you can't eat your cereal, right? And you start to curse God because somehow He didn't save your milk, right? And that's how fickle sometimes our Christianity is and our faith is. And it's just like pitiful. We live in a country where we have just about everything we need and more. And if we don't have it, we can get it quickly and easily. And we want God and we want our goods too. And when God takes away our goods or something happens, it's like all of a sudden we start tanking over here. And it's like, wait. Is your faith relying upon the good things? What happens if you were born in Africa right now, and you were born in India, and you were born in Asia, and you were being persecuted? What would you do then? You see, so everything that we go through, our light momentary, that's why Paul says, our light momentary troubles, and he's faced stuff bigger than you and I are going to face. And considered it light and momentary. It is not worthy to be compared with the glory that will be revealed in us. We just need, he says, to persevere. We just need to keep believing when we don't see the outcome. Because God is good all the time. And you got to know that. And you got to settle that in your heart. So Deuteronomy, back to Deuteronomy. Remember how the Lord did all this to reveal what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep His commands. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which nobody had ever experienced, neither you nor your ancestors has known. He wanted to teach you that man does not live on donuts alone. Okay? Isn't that perfect setup? God just set us up so perfect. He lets you go hungry so that you would know. And it's like, Jesus, I got food you know nothing about. My food is to do the will of my Father. Right? Hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you will be filled. I mean, you come to church for donuts, you come to church to be filled with something that only God can give. With manna that's food for your soul. You see, you're not going to get this anywhere except from the Word of God. And guess what? Yesterday's manna won't take care of tomorrow's hunger. God gave manna daily. And He gives His Word as alive and active. And you can't live on this one meal today for the rest of the week. You need manna daily. And God gives it daily. So God wanted to humble and test Israel to see what was in their heart, whether they would fear or whether they'd have faith. Control is a big issue for us, and when we feel out of control, worship team, come on forward. We'll tie this up here. When you feel out of control, just think what that feels like. There's probably some twinge of panic or anxiety, not knowing the future, not knowing how things are going to turn out. And so we try and control things, but as some wise philosopher says, control is really just a fallacy. You're never in control anyway. The thing you can control is your emotions and your actions, your decisions. But when you feel out of control, all of a sudden panic and anxiety begin to rise up. And I just want you to know, practically, when you feel that way, what is it you need to prophesy? We sing a song, we will prophesy your promises. I believe you, God. When we can't see the end in sight, we just sang this song very intentionally today. What will you do then? Well, number one, I remember I'm not in control anyway, never have been, never will be, but God is, and He's good. He's faithful, He knows where I'm at, He knows my name, He knows my situation, and He's with me in it. My job is to stay faithful and true to Him. So I preach to myself. I prophesy to myself. Like David did in the Psalms. Why so downcast, O my soul? Put your trust in God. He's preaching to himself. Put your trust in God. He is faithful. I'm like panicked because I got Saul chasing me. I'm living in a cave. Everybody hates me. Everybody wants to kill me. And why so downcast, O my soul? Wouldn't that put you in a little bit of a panic? What are you going to do in a time like that? Well, we find David saying, preaching to himself, prophesying to himself. God's faithful, God's good, God's with you, God's got you. Stop panicking, put your hope and trust and faith in a good God who loves you. Now that's hard work. That's the work that you have to do. If you don't, your spiritual life will be schizophrenic at best. You'll be weak and miserable. You'll sing hallelujah on Sunday and curse God on Monday, and people will look at you and go, if that's the kind of, I don't need or want that kind of faith, Christianity. And that's where our American Western version is gone. Like for Saul to just be transported over to Egypt for, a year or two. It's just experience God's goodness. But we can experience here. So conclusion, just throw up a couple questions for you. This is on our app. If you get the Outlook app, all these notes are on there. You can run them by later. What do you do when the pressure's on? How deep does your faith run? How sure are you of God's goodness and faithfulness? I can't answer that for you, and maybe you can't answer it for yourself until you find out what tomorrow brings. Here's the truth. God always has a plan for everything, and His plans are always good. His plans involve your transformation, maturity, and inner strength. His plans involve revealing His glory and defeating your enemy. He will finish the good work He began in you. There's a promise. He didn't die to leave you defenseless. His plans for you are good. His promises are always yes and amen. He will never leave you or forsake you, and greater is He that is in you than He is in the world. Now you're either going to believe that tomorrow morning, or you're going to forget that. And you're either going to panic, or you're going to trust God. And how you respond in adversity will determine whether you wander in the wilderness or whether you experience God's promises. That's it. Right? It's a fork in the road. Tomorrow's adversity is a fork in the road. Tomorrow's adversity has come to see what's in your heart and to strengthen your core, so that God can reveal His goodness to you and defeat your enemies. Help us, Lord, tomorrow remember that the enemy, we go into battle and the enemy's trying to put pressure on us, lie to us, cause panic, so that we would curse you and die. Father, you're allowing Him to do that so that you can strengthen our inner core, you can reveal your goodness, you can defeat him, and make us strong and mature. So Lord, like Paul says, therefore consider it joy when tomorrow comes and you face trials, because they're there to test your faith, that you might learn to persevere. When you persevere, you would be mature and not lack anything. So rejoice always in your trials. God, we want to be strong in you. We want our faith to grow. We want our muscles of faith and our foundations to be unshakable. So no matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what the enemy throws at us, Lord, we would trust in you and your goodness, and we would see you in the land of the living and experience your goodness and your glory. read you what Paul wrote. We have this treasure in jars of clay, this goodness of God, this faith, and a body, right, to show that this all-surpassing power, as we endure, is from God, and it's not from us. We're hard-pressed on every side, but we're not crushed. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. Sometimes we don't know what's going on. We're perplexed, but we don't go to places of despair because we know God's got a plan. We're persecuted, but we're never abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus. We experience what he experienced from the world on the outside so that the life of Jesus may be revealed in our body, what's going on the inside. For we who are alive are always being given over to death or difficulty and trial for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in your mortal body. Therefore do not lose heart, though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we're being renewed day by day. For our light momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. And he prays in Ephesians, I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your heart through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all God's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know and experience this love. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that's at work within us, to him be glory in the church for now and forevermore. And so this is what he's trying to do, to strengthen us with power by his Spirit in our inner man, that we may experience his love and never doubt it again. And that the world would see us and go, wow, that all-surpassing power is not from us, but from God who lives in us. We trust in him.